to kick things off. Welcome again. My name is Michael Twig. I'm going to be our host for today. I'm the Program Director of Land Use, Nature, and Agriculture at the Smart Prosperity Institute. Welcome to today's webinar, Investing in Nunavut's Blue Conservation Economy, an Inuit-led vision for economic development. So before we kick things off, I just want to start with an acknowledgement about the deep connections that Indigenous communities have with lands and waters across this country that we all call home. Paying particular attention to the role of Inuit communities in Nunavut and across Inuit-Nunavut as stewards of their lands and waters, primarily as a result of most of this project taking place in many of these communities. We do this to reaffirm our individual but also our collective commitment at the Smart Prosperity Institute toward improving relationships between nations in an effort to try and walk together on a path towards meaningful reconciliation. Before we move into the program itself, there are a few housekeeping items that I need to address just before we move on to the meat of the issue at hand. So the first of these being, we are going to ask folks to submit questions as they come along. You can do so by submitting them in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. You can submit as many questions as you like. There's no limit on the number of questions you can put in, and we will try to work those in the second half of the webinar. So that will roughly be at about 20 minutes past the hour. And finally, we are recording, as you all heard at the beginning of the webinar. We will be recording and making a copy available to everyone following the conclusion of today's session. We will also include many of the links for materials that we will be sharing with you today. So in terms of today's agenda, we're going to start by providing a few opening remarks from myself that broadly outlines the potential for advancing blue conservation economies in Nunavut at large. We will then move to share a short video on the Nikihakut Country Food Facility that is currently underway in the hamlet of Tolujuak, which aims to employ local hunters and provide better access to country food. And this facility is part of the Avaktuk Inuit Protected and Conserved Area project, which we'll be hearing more from our guests who are with us today. My colleague Tala Ewan will then move on to sharing some of the findings from the recent launches of two reports that Smart Prosperity put out today that broadly cover the vision for an Inuit-led economic development model that is currently undergoing in Tolujuak, and what these lessons learned can mean for communities in Nunavut and across Inuit-Nunavut who are looking to replicate similar success. At this point, we will invite our two experts who are with us today, our panelists, to join a discussion on the Avaktuk project and talk about why it's so important for the people of Tolujuak, and to talk about how other coastal communities can take advantage of the lessons that are being learned to develop their own conservation economies. So we have today with us Jimmy Uli Katalik, who is of the Tolujuak Umaru Liri Jigut Association. Apologies for my pronunciation on that. And we have Aaron Keenan, who is the Senior Conservation Manager of Arctic Conservation at the WWF Canada. Following the end of that panel discussion, we'll have a couple of closing remarks just to summarize what we've heard today, and also discuss how there are ways that folks can engage either with the materials that we presented or other ways that you can follow up in learning more about conservation economy opportunities across Nunavut. So to start setting the stage with some opening remarks, we just want to emphasize off the bat that Nunavut has had the fastest growing economy in Canada for the last 6 years. The mining industry and the tourism sectors have broadly led the charge, and this has led to a record number of new jobs and a number of key construction projects in the territory, like schools and state-of-the-art health centers. Now, many communities are actually considering themselves to be better off in many respects, but the recent success doesn't really tell the whole story of what's going on the ground. Behind these impressive growth rates are the fact that around 40% of the jobs created remain vacant in the territory, and that high unemployment and even higher costs of living actually means that many families are facing tough choices in seeking to provide basic necessities on the day to day. Now, this story in of itself sounds like the general affordability issues that are popping up all across the rest of the country, but there are two key differences that are really making people stop and take notice of what's going on in Nunavut. The first is that in a region that has a country food economy that generates approximately $200 million a year in value, access to nutritious food for many Inuit communities remains a key and consistent challenge on an ongoing basis. The second is more of a leadership role. Many of the communities that we're going to talk about today and the projects that we're going to hear about with regards to the Avik in Inuit protected and conserved area are showing leadership in terms of meeting Canada's biodiversity and climate targets. But they're also showing a new vision, or maybe I should say a renewed vision, of Inuit-led regional economic development, one that prioritizes land and water resources as a way to create jobs that are not only desirable, but accessible for people within their own communities. And that can help provide better access to food as a result. Now, broadly, what this characterizes overall is what we're here to talk about today, which is a blue conservation economy model for economic development in Northern Canada. Now, just a couple final points to emphasize that there's still work to be done, a lot of work that needs to be done. But what has been crucial in terms of recent developments is that the Canadian government, so at the federal level, there is a signal of a willingness to move beyond the idea that public investments in the territory need to focus either on development and infrastructure or the environment. This type of balanced approach can and already has started to generate millions of dollars for coastal communities across the territory, while simultaneously improving access to food for many and also instilling a renewed sense of community pride for Inuit across the entire territory. Now, what I've said has a lot of words, but in order to illustrate what it actually means for communities on the ground, we're going to share with you that video I was talking about to put in perspective exactly what it looks like for Inuit communities when they start investing in a blue conservation economy. So without further ado, we're going to show you a video about the Nikihakut Country Food Processing Facility and the type of impact that it's having for the people of Tulujua.
We've been here 10,000 years. We know the land, we know the animal. We want to continue to be out on the land, Pusia and Avito. We feel we are one ecosystem with the environment, the wildlife, and we want to keep it that way. Polar bear, wolf, muskrat, caribou, foxes, all kinds of birds. Those are all the things we want to protect. Dirt Rock is the most northerly community based on North America's mainland. North from here are only islands, sea, and ice. We have about 1,100 people living here, 220 houses, and 220 jobs. The whole Boothia Peninsula was a hunting area for the people that live around here. 1945 I was in the if you in Tanauta, I was contacted ang nahimnamig, halukiyonamig, natsikiyonamig. Country food, something that is given to us right from birth. A lot of the elders need country food. We have very limited jobs, so everybody has no means of going on the land with ATVs or snowmobiles. because we cannot go hunting, we have to buy the food that we have that is brought from down south to the stores. That everything is shipped and costs a lot of money. Those are not our natural diet, so therefore they cause a lot of diabetes. There's we become more health issue every year. If we want our country food to be plentiful for years to come, also because we want able to be access to country food, we have to protect our territory, and that's our too. Since 1972, I think they've been trying to protect our Boothia Peninsula. On a map, on paper, it looks big, and the reason why we are protecting it, the members say it's very narrow. It's too small. It's so important because it's a capping ground for caribou. The community doesn't want any mining. They want the caribou to be healthy, the wildlife to be healthy, the environment to be clean the way it is. We want to create harvest group in a protected and conserved area. Our plan is to protect 45,039 square kilometers of land, which represent about 0.4 of Canada's mainland. We also want to protect 40,730 square kilometers of marine area and 4,413 square kilometers of freshwater habitat. We will be hiring guardians to be the eyes and ears for our community. They will also collect observations about our show and our wildlife, and also harvest country food for their community. As a result of our protected area, we will be able to create our own local economy based on country food. Likikakut is it's a cut and wrap facility we're trying to open for the people to be able to access country food. Likikakut will hire local hunters to supply the cut and wrap facility with country food. And we will have local men, women, and youth to operate the facility. We will process country food that is ready to eat, like ground meat, steak, ribs, and filleted fish. We're going to sell to the community at a reasonable price. We need to save our culture, to save the land. We want to reduce poverty, get more healthier, and more people to get income. There's going to be at least 10 to 20 more jobs created once we have the cut and wrap facility. Also, 10 more jobs throughout the protection of our food.
Great, thanks, folks. I'm really happy we were able to get get things in order and have that video be showed with the sound. It's very powerful to see, and the message comes across extremely well with our colleague here, Jimmy, providing a lot of that insight. Before we get into the panel discussion to talk a little bit more about some of the issues that Jimmy raised during that video, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Talha to talk a little bit more about what we saw when we were actually able to visit the community in January and what that led to Smart Prosperity's research in this area. Over to you, Talha.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everyone. My name is Talha Awan, and I'm a research associate on the Land Use, Nature, and Agriculture team at the Smart Prosperity Institute. I'm one of the authors of the reports on conservation economies in Nunavut. Before I start, I just want to say this research is commissioned by WWF Canada with funding support from the Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency. The goal of this project is to build compelling profiles of conservation economies in Nunavut that connect land and marine-based conservation with opportunities for local economic development. The first report is a regional overview, which outlines the opportunities and challenges for establishing conservation economies in Nunavut, including an analysis of 3 case studies of emerging conservation economies. The second report is an in-depth look at the case study of Avictuk to highlight the ecological, socio-cultural, and economic benefits of pursuing conservation-based development for the community of Tuluuaq. I'll be broadly touching on some key findings from both reports, and before getting to the Avictuk case study and what we learned from our visit, I'm going to give a brief overview of Nunavut's conservation economy as a whole. Since 2017, Nunavut has had the fastest growing economy in Canada, but this growth has not translated into greater access to benefits for Inuit communities in Nunavut. 50 to 80% of households report continued barriers to accessing nutritious food because subsistence hunting is too expensive, and healthy store-bought food is unaffordable for most due to low wages and lack of sufficient jobs. Unemployment among Inuit is at 27% in Nunavut. Furthermore, Inuit communities are expressing concern about the ongoing loss of traditional knowledge, culture, and language. A blue conservation economy approach can help address these issues. In this economic model, wealth is generated from a region's, from the sustainable use of a region's natural resources in a way that meets the needs of the local community while conserving and restoring rather than depleting natural resources. In a blue conservation economy, the livelihood and well-being of coastal communities is closely connected to the conservation of land and marine ecosystems. It has the potential to improve access to nutritious food, create culturally relevant local jobs, and reinforce the value of Inuit traditional knowledge, culture, and language. So let's look at how a blue conservation economy can achieve these benefits. The value streams in Nunavut's blue conservation economy involve low impact land-based activities. Country food harvesting, which includes caribou, muskox, seal, and Arctic char, is an essential part of Inuit diet, as we heard Jimmy say in the video, and relies on protection of areas that animals inhabit and migrate through. It's estimated that Nunavut's country food system provides nutritious food valued at up to $200 million per year. Inuit Guardians draw on local knowledge and experience to enhance stewardship of key land and water resources. These programs provide local jobs, role models for youth, and facilitate transmission of traditional knowledge. Based on initial investments, we estimate that Inuit Guardians in Avictuk and Taluriutup Imana will generate $27 million in community, environmental, and economic benefits. Tourism and recreation involves activities like marine wildlife and cultural tourism. It can create local job opportunities while reinforcing Inuit language and culture and encouraging greater youth engagement. Nunavut's tourism industry, which is mainly based on nature-based activities, generated $96 million in 2018. Inuit art, textiles, and clothing is based on traditional practice, where harvested animals not only provide nutritious food, but their hides are a source of clothing, footwear, and building materials, while other parts of the animal are used to make carvings, jewelry, and other artwork. It reduces waste from harvesting and preserves traditional knowledge. Inuit art generated $37 million for communities across Nunavut in 2015. Research and monitoring programs provide training and employment while building knowledge on the health of marine ecosystems that are critical to developing the conservation economy. And integrated marine spatial planning is used to inform decision-making on lucrative industries that operate around protected areas and also to determine the full value of ocean resources for activities like country food harvesting, guardians, tourism, and research. So as you can see, the land-based activities discussed here provide direct revenues and have measurable economic impacts, but they also have several co-benefits. Conservation-based economies can promote traditional knowledge transmission around how to harvest animals for food, clothing, and other items, and how to prepare country food for consumption, and how to engage in environmental stewardship. Land-based activities improve community cohesion by building stronger relationships between individuals, their families, communities, and the land. Conservation-based economies create an environment for youth to engage with Inuit culture while potentially earning an income, and elders have more opportunities to engage with their territory, which they are rarely afforded right now. Hunting, fishing, and traditional food sharing programs support good dietary and physical health among Inuit and reduce the impact of dietary diseases. Land-based activities facilitate a strong relationship with the land and the community, leading to better mental health outcomes and reduced risk of suicide in Inuit communities. In our first report, we looked at 3 case studies of how investing in local conservation economies centered around protected areas is driving economic growth. We looked at Avictuk, Talurutiup, Imana National Marine Conservation Area in Nunavut, and the Angunakvia Nikikiam Marine Protected Area in the Northwest Territories. Each of them have regional country food economies that rely on the protection of land and marine ecosystems. Each of them have Inuit Guardians that act as stewards of key hunting and fishing areas, collecting valuable information about wildlife, biodiversity, and cultural sites. And each of them have potential for tourism activities like wildlife viewing, kayaking, boat tours, sport hunting, which provide visitors with an opportunity to experience and learn about the area's unique ecosystems and wildlife. So now let's take a deeper look at the burgeoning conservation economy in Avictuk, which was the subject of our second report. For the Avictuk case study, we visited Taluhuak in this past January to learn about current and potential activities that are part of the region's conservation economy. During our visit, we conducted interviews with members of the Taluhuak Umaru Liririgut Association, Inuit Guardians, and other community members to understand the challenges and opportunities for developing the local conservation economy. Country food harvested in Avictuk supports the local food economy in Taluhuak. The local country food economy depends on the protection of the ecosystems that are part of Avictuk. To improve access to nutritious food, the community is looking to establish Nikikakut, a country food processing facility, as we saw in the video, that will create better access to nutritious food while also creating jobs and providing opportunities for training and cultural engagement. The Inuit Guardians program provides job opportunities for community members in environmental monitoring, hunting, fishing, and providing food for vulnerable members of the community. As part of their monitoring and stewardship activities, the Guardians collect ecological data, including migration patterns of key land and marine species and the growing impacts of climate change. In this way, they contribute to the generation of valuable ecological data sets. The Guardians are also providing several co-benefits for the local community, like increasing youth and elder engagement and facilitating the transmission of traditional knowledge. In terms of tourism, the community has existing tourism infrastructure that can be bolstered with investment to support a regional nature-based tourism industry. Wildlife viewing and bird watching has potential to generate significant tourism revenues, and sport hunting could also generate income for local guides and outfitters. As a potential offshoot of the Nikikakut project and the Inuit Guardians program, the community is looking to establish a regional textile and clothing industry using hides and pelts of animals that are already being harvested in Avictuk. The byproducts of harvesting could potentially have significant economic benefits for a local clothing and arts economy, while promoting transmission of traditional knowledge and skills around how to harvest and make use of the full animal. There's a clear business case for connecting marine conservation efforts to substantial economic development in Nunavut. Investments in local conservation economies can be seen as a catalyst for economic growth and development across the territory. Our reports identify key areas of investment to help communities chart their paths for economic development, including the need for more country food processing facilities, equipment and space for guardians, investments in tourism infrastructure, such as tourism centers and wilderness cabins. Doing so will contribute to an Inuit-led vision of regional economic development that prioritizes the long-term well-being of Inuit households. Thank you for listening, and thank you to everyone that provided support on these reports, including WWF Canada, the Tuluuaq Umaru Liririgut Association, and of course, the community members of Tuluuaq. Back to you, Michael.
Great, thanks, Tala. And what I will do is invite folks that are on the line to please submit any questions you have right now, as we will be moving into our discussion with our panelists. So to reintroduce those panelists who are joining us, so we have Jimmy Olikatelik, the manager of the Avictuk Inuit Protected and Conserved Project, and the Tuluuaq Umaru Liririgut Association. And we have Aaron Keenan, Senior Manager for Arctic Marine Conservation at WWF Canada. And of course, the person that just brought us that presentation, Tala Awan, Research Associate at the Smart Prosperity Institute. So to kick things off, we're just going to kind of go around the horn and give folks an opportunity to answer a question about what they've been working on and why Blue Conservation Economy model seems to fit the priorities of different communities and activities in the Canadian context, all the way right down to different communities in Nunavut. So Jimmy, I'm hoping I could start with you and ask you if you could outline a little bit more about your vision for the Avictuk Inuit Protected and Conserved Area, and why this vision is important for not only the present time for your community, but your community's future as well.
All right. Good evening, me, Michael. Good evening, Talaha. Yeah, very good presentation. Like the video said, back when Tuluuaq was formed, there was, like, we were promised houses and money for groceries from the stores. When that happened, right then we lost our culture. But we haven't been able to almost like get back until now, because today is more different from than my parents' childhood. When they started gathering the nomads, they slaughtered the ducks, like the duck team, but that was not our culture, and from there they did. Sorry, there was also a gas exploration that was happening up north, and they wanted to do a pipeline down through Arvifto, down to Baker Lake, and then to Alberta. But the elders back then didn't want anything like that on Arvifto, so they discussed the matter in their own home in the evenings, and top ways to not have the gas line down to Arvifto. when I started in 2015, that was my first job. The board wanted me to look into is protect agriculture. They always feel that terrible and like environment and the wildlife is our natural diet. So therefore, we want to keep it that way. A few years ago, there was a report that Canada has the cleanest polar bears in the world. So we want to keep it. We want to keep it that way. We're doing sampling, water sampling, wildlife sampling, environment sampling. We're going to use all this information to gather, get for our management, wildlife management stuff to go on in the future, so that we don't overharvest our wildlife. We want to create, like fishing, commercial fishing, stuff like that. Where families could work together and get some income. Because we're like, even though we're Inuit, even though we're close to the land, it's harder today to be out on the land because times have changed. If we have Nikikakut, we're trying to create Nikikakut is kind of a facility that want access to country food, because a lot of elders don't have any means to go out on the land today. A lot of low-income families have no means to get country food, so the Cotton Wrap facility will be servicing that to provide country food for the elders. We also want to make money on the country food to keep the Cotton Wrap facility going for many years. Also use some of the money that we make with the Cotton Wrap facility to start getting youth and elders back out on the land to get back to their roots. We also want, to create a place where young people will go eat country food or soup, stuff like that, where they could do their homework, because we have lack of space in some community and in some houses. So we want to create a place where they could go eat and do homework, because we want to keep the agriculture educated Inuit to keep the guardianship program, the agriculture and the Cotton Wrap facility going for generations to come. I hope that makes sense clearly.
Thanks so much for that, Jimmy. There's a lot to unpack here, and I'm hoping we could get Aaron's perspective as a group that's been with the most recent Abitiq Protected and Conserved Area project pretty much since inception is how WWF has been standing there to support that. And I'm wondering, Aaron, if you could give us some insight into some of the elements of what Jimmy talked about, and from the perspective of WWF, what are you most excited about seeing this Inuit-led vision come to the forefront and be championed and really give power and ownership back to these communities?
Thank you, Michael. I'd be happy to speak to that, and thank you, Jimmy, for providing such a comprehensive overview of your project. So WWF has been providing support to the Tulajuaq Hunters and Trappers organization for a few years now, because, Jimmy sort of told the story, but the Hunters and Trappers Association had a vision for protecting this area and all of the other components that Jimmy went over, and reached out to WWF for support in helping them kind of bring that vision into reality, which is what we've been trying to work with them on over the past couple of years. Michael, your question was what excites me the most about what's happening in Tulajuaq, and the first thing that came to mind is the opportunity to work with such amazing leadership in the community of Tulajuaq is very exciting. that they came to us with a really clear vision and really clear motivations and really knew what they wanted to work towards, and we're just seeking for, you know, some support to help them get there, and we were more than happy to be able to provide some of that anyway. It's a project that has so much engagement from so many people across the community, kind of expanding out of the really strong leadership of the Hunters and Trappers Association and of course Jimmy. So that's just been really inspiring to be able to be involved with. But the other component of this project that really excites me is the alignment of so many different community priorities into one initiative. So Jimmy's talking about food security, a cut and wrap facility, a Guardians initiative, you know, helping kids with their homework, helping people connect more with cultural activities. And all of those things may seem like they're disparate parts of something, but under the kind of the banner of Avigtuk and the initiative to protect Avigtuk, you see all of these different goals can kind of be accomplished with this one vision. It's really, really inspiring, and really, we've seen people connect with that idea, both within Talojoac and with other communities that WWF has worked with in Nunavut. Really, Talojoac's leading the way on this. And even people outside of Nunavut, like that's why this initiative has received the Arctic Inspiration Prize and has gotten so much interest from people all across Canada and internationally, is because it's so led by such wonderful people and also is meeting so many goals in such a cohesive way. So that is what's exciting about this model.
Wonderful, thanks for that. And maybe if I could just trouble you with a quick follow-up question that we got from the audience that speaks a little bit to those connections that you're mentioning. Even outside of Talojoac and outside of the community, people are really starting to recognize the impact that this type of model can have in terms of biodiversity and climate commitments. And we received a question from the audience talking about whether there's been efforts to kind of map the direct impacts that these types of models are having from a conservation perspective. And is this something that perhaps maybe WWF Canada is thinking could be a way forward to really truly understand how these translate not only to local success, but regional success and then national and global success as well?
I think this model, in some ways, it's relatively new, but it's also gaining so much momentum, especially as we're working towards, Canada's working towards our international commitments to protect 30% of our marine areas by 2030 and terrestrial areas as well. I don't know that we know from a, I guess, traditional conservation perspective what the impact is, but I would say yet. I think we'll see that, and I'm really interested to see that studied over the next few years as we see more initiatives like this popping up and gaining momentum. But I also think that there's lots of research that shows that the most effective conservation initiatives are the ones that are led by people in the communities that are affected by the conservation activities, and projects that are really reflecting the goals and the needs of people on the ground, which is what we have in the example of Avigtuk. It's an exemplary of that kind of mode where it's led by people in the community and on the ground who are going to be most impacted by any conservation activities happening there. And so having that engagement, and not just engagement, but leadership, I think has been shown to have positive impact from a conservation perspective in other places around the world. And I am kind of hopeful to see that happen in Talojoac as well, and hopefully elsewhere in Nunavut.
Excellent, thanks. Jimmy, I see you're raising your hand. Do you want to jump in on that as well?
Sorry, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, we're also working closely with the neighboring communities. Joe Haven and Talojoac, since they have the same interests of protecting the area. So we've been working with Joe Haven as our sister communities, like we're all pretty much related in this area. So we've been talking about, because we're going to try and get a cut and wrap facility for our community. We've been talking with them to see if they could get like a tannery, because like we were talked about, we're going to have byproducts. We want to save everything we could. We want to use everything we could. Like, it's our tradition. We also want to share with the communities, like, you know, if they catch some game, we cut it up for them and we give it back for free, just the cost of whatever stuff like this. Because it to get back that sharing of Inuit traditional value, but a little bit different, but still to get that value back. These are some of the things we're looking down the future, just to add to the neighboring communities and we also want to to start off. We have plenty of muskox and plenty of char. If we need to, we're going to sell to our neighboring communities to keep our Canada facility going, stuff like that. So these are some of the things we're looking at.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. Maybe I could pop in a question from the audience that follows up on the status of Avictuk. You mentioned that protection for these areas was started in 1972, and the question was regarding the status. What's the current status of protection for Avictuk as of today?
Well, under the Nunavut land use plan, it's recognized as limited use, and we want to continue, want to work with the governments and try and get IABA established, stuff like that down the future. But right now, we're still working on it and stuff like that. So we're pretty excited where we are right now.
And one more point, sorry to bother you again, but one more point before I move over for a question with Tala. You mentioned working with communities in Johaven and Kugaruk. What is the response like when this idea of protecting the peninsula, protecting Avictuk is brought into meetings with community members? Are you finding it easy to connect with people around this, or are there some challenges you might face in convincing all the communities to work together?
In the beginning, it was very challenging because, they thought, because of the boundary, they thought, they were losing some of their rights because the reason why we have the boundary is because we want to start from somewhere. But in reality, that boundary could be all on Johaven and Kugaruk land and make one big one. If we were to work on it and we wanted that, and that would happen. But everything takes time, and we're ahead of Johaven and Kugaruk, so we're working together to try and be in one same page. As like I said, we hunt in the same area, and we have families in each community. So these are some things we want to work on.
Thanks for that answer. It really does kind of paint a picture of the three communities working together for a common vision. But like any family, there's always going to be some challenges in trying to arrive at the same destination. So thanks for that answer. I'm gonna go over to Tala to answer a question or give us your insight. As you know, SPI is what we consider to be a relative newcomer to this project, as a result of folks having been working on this for decades. But I just wanted you to give Talha a little bit of your impression around what you saw when you were able to visit the community in January, and in terms of the economic opportunities that are available for the community that you were able to profile in the reports that you developed. What ones do you think could possibly have the most impact right away, or the biggest impact almost immediately?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Michael. I think the biggest impact on me upon visiting the community was seeing the huge need for a country food-based economy in Taluhuac. Vulnerable community members like single mothers, elders, and those without housing are in need of nutritious country food, and Taluhuac's plan for Nikikakut, establishing a facility to process and prepare and distribute country food, is likely to address these issues head on. And it's not just a critical part of their diet, but harvesting country food is a preferred activity for so many in the community, and something that they wish that they could do more on a regular basis. It gives them an opportunity to be on the land and to be around friends and family, and then share the food that they harvest. I remember us going to the grocery store, and when we informed the cashier, who was a young woman, of what we are doing in the community, she was unequivocal in saying that she really wishes there could be more hunting and gathering, because that's what she loves to do. So Nikikakut is the start of a burgeoning country food economy in Tilukwak that community members are going to benefit from in so many ways, and they're eager to see it flourish. And that can be a model for the neighboring communities of Johaven and Kugaruk, as Jimmy was mentioning, and for others across the territory. So yeah, that's the activity that has the potential to have huge impact, and it was really amazing to see that firsthand.
That's great. Thanks, Tala, so much for that insight. We have a bit of a follow-up question on that from the audience that talks about more sort of the parameters around a conservation economy or a blue conservation economy, and how the different priorities might be identified and what types of activities might be acceptable within those parameters. The question points specifically to carbon capture or carbon collection. And just tell her if, from the work you've done around, circulating in the community of Tulujuak and getting feedback from community members. I'm wondering if you could speak about, the openness of communities to try new things, and how willing their work to kind of be entrepreneurs and develop new different types of business opportunities.
Yeah, I would say that the community is extremely open to pursuing any activities that are going to achieve their goal of protecting Avittuk. There are, of course, the main activities that we saw of the country food economy, Inuit Guardians, and tourism, but the Guardians expressed to us their interest in engaging in research and monitoring, and being trained on using tools for conducting research and monitoring in Avittuk, and with the right protocols, which I don't think are developed as of yet. We could also leverage the Inuit Guardians to help understand the potential for carbon capture in Avittuk. So yeah, there's definitely a huge appetite for getting not only utilizing the existing skills, traditional knowledge that they have, but also learning new skills and being trained on things like data collection and putting together valuable ecological data sets through the Guardians, through other community members that are interested, and learn more about not just about wildlife migration patterns, biodiversity conservation, but also potentially carbon capture and storage.
Thanks, Tala. Maybe I could pose a similar question to Jimmy and ask, your opinion on how open the community would be for trying new ways or new avenues to develop new types of businesses that would fit within the conservation economy. Sort of move from country food into a new type of business. Do you think the community is ready and willing to try new things?
Thank you, Michael. This we like to. Well, we had muskox hunt in 2016, I think it was, and that really went well. Like the community is been hearing about Avittuk and knowing about Avittuk, and we've been talking about and working with the community on Nikikakut. It's been very positive. People are looking forward to it. Unfortunately, COVID delayed everything, so it's almost like, again, it's a broken promise. It's a broken promise. People promise, the government promised this, and then it never happens. So it's almost like that. But it's in a process. So and it's Inuit-led, so it's going to happen, and we're people are excited, looking forward to it. In the guardianship program, since we had the guardianship program, since they've been able to get country food for the elders and single parents, people were calling them guardian angels instead of just marine guardians. They were calling them guardian angels. So this IPCA and NRECA has been very, very positive for our community. Like I said, it created 14, since right now today there's 14 full-time jobs, not just part-time, but full-time jobs that the community never had before. And well, once we get our cut and wrap facility, there will be more jobs. So it's been very positive. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that answer. I wanted to, we're slowly coming to the end of the hour here, and I wanted to kind of ask two general questions. The first one being, what type of investment do you see is needed today with regards to advancing conservation economies in Tulujuak or in Nunavut more broadly? And I'm hoping to maybe start with Tala and then work in Aaron and Jimmy, and then we'll move to our last group question after that.
Yeah, really quickly, to promote the country food economy, there needs to be investment in more processing facilities to support Inuit Guardians. There needs to be more investment in equipment and spaces for them to service their equipment and spaces out on the land like wilderness cabins where they can do their environmental monitoring work and tools for data collection to grow tourism and recreation. There needs to be investment in infrastructure such as tourism centers and wilderness cabins where tourists can stay, and also bolstering the existing infrastructure like hotels. And the art and textiles economy could benefit from investments in processing facilities like a tanning facility that Jimmy was mentioning, where the byproducts of country food harvesting could be processed and made accessible to local artisans.
Great, thanks, Tala. And I should preface the fact that we're talking about investment, not to give Tala the advantage as our resident economist on this call, but we're talking about investment in time and support as well. Basically, broadly speaking, Tala talked a lot about the infrastructure and investment needs, but we're talking the whole package of what is needed to really make this work. So maybe Aaron and Jimmy, you can share respectively your visions of what is needed in addition to what Tala was talking about. We'll go Aaron first and then Jimmy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Talha gave a great answer in terms of concretely what types of investments are needed. I think what WWF's hope or goal, I guess, in undertaking this project with Smart Prosperity and with Tulujuak was to communicate through looking at the economic opportunities associated with the Avictuk initiative and other examples from across Nunavut. We're trying to communicate that it doesn't have to be a choice or a trade-off between economic opportunities or conservation. And so I guess in addition to sort of the more traditional investments that Tull has laid out, I would say there also needs to be a sort of investment of open-mindedness. Maybe that sounds cheesy, but just kind of being open to not seeing economic development as totally the opposite of conservation, and trying to kind of broaden people's understandings of what conservation can bring, and the interplay of economic opportunities like Guardians programs, like country food harvesting, etc., and how that's associated with conservation initiatives. So again, the goal in kind of having this report put together and released is to raise awareness of that concept. And I think there needs to be kind of people understanding this concept and seeing the possibilities and being willing to then invest in those opportunities directly with people power and financial investments as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much for that, Aaron. And Jimmy, I'm hoping you will be able to talk about practically what next steps are needed for your community in the Avictuk project and the Nikihakut facility. What do you need today to make this reality a benefit for future generations?
Yeah, can you meet Michael? Yeah, when we start trying to get the current facility in Nifik, the way when we won the Arctic Inspiration Prize, when we were being asked that question about, why should we win the Arctic Inspiration Prize? What makes you unique? Well, our question was the current facility is common sense to every community in Nunavut. There's a couple of meat plants in Nunavut, but they're not localized. If they're more localized, I think they would have better purpose. For the future, we like I said, we've been here 10,000 years. We want to be here. Like we just need more funding for offices, more labs, and more houses. Working with Western science, today, we need more labs. That's more funding for infrastructure. That's all pretty much we need. Michael.
Thank you very much. And I notice, so thank you all so much for the enlightening conversation we've had. I am noticing we're at the end of the hour. I did want to provide you each one final comment. So as we're going through that, I'd ask my colleagues on the back end of the webinar here to perhaps start popping in some of the resources we mentioned we would share at the end. And we'll just go around quickly. Talha, Aaron, and Jimmy will go in that order. And if you could say in one sentence, you had the ear of anyone in the country in terms of a decision maker, of someone who can help make this vision a reality, what would be the one thing you would really want them to hear? Talha, we can start with you.
I would say Nunavut's conservation economy is ready for investment. And this investment will not only advance community development, it will also advance Indigenous reconciliation. It's an investment into an Inuit-led vision of economic development that communities in Nunavut are eager to pursue and see flourish.
Aaron, over to you.
I would say that achieving all of these promises of a conservation economy is not possible without habitat protection and conservation. And that habitat conservation needs to be kind of led by the community, integrated into the conservation economy vision.
Thank you. Jimmy, last word.
Yeah, I don't know how else to top that up. It's yeah, like again, we're not against mining in general. That's something is played by other people, but we just don't want mining on Alberto, and we want blue economy on Alberto because it's been the request of the members since 1972, and therefore I think we have a good threshold and pillars because of that. We're Inuit. We live. We need country food. We could make money off country food. Tourism, nature walks, nature stuff like that. There's so much we could do. We just need the opportunity and funding to start it.
Thank you so much. So we're going to end the conversation here. Thank you all so much for being here. It's been a pleasure to talk more about this project that is near and dear to all of our hearts. Thank you so much, Talha, for your presentation. Jimmy and Aaron, again, thank you from a million times over for participating today. It's been really, really great to get to chat about these extremely important projects that are ongoing. And I also want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us today. This is a really important topic, and it's hopefully the first of many more conversations that we'll be able to carry on as we move through, not only with Avik-Tuk, but as Avik-Tuk inspires other communities in Nunavut to undertake a similar form of blue conservation economy development. So thank you very much. Please check out the links that we've shared in the chat, and we will let you get back to the rest of your day. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.